So if you're applying to college and getting ready for college, the big thing is the standardized test, and there are two big options, the SAT or the ACT. If I'm a student, let's say in sophomore year now, trying to figure out which one to take, what should I really focus on? I have no idea what the differences are between the two. I kind of know my strengths, but firstly, what is the big difference between the SAT and the ACT in your eyes? This can be a philosophical question. This could be
Well,
a
okay,
structural
so
question.
until last year, when both were 3.5 hours long, you could kind of compare and say, well, ACTs, it's more time pressed, and there's science sections, and it's cut out for people who can read fast. As for SATs with a paper, there's vast amount of knowledge that you need to have just if you want to do well, like U.S. history and grammar and so on. But now, speaking of digital SAT to ACTs, okay, it's hard to, kids are choosing the digital SAT route just because it's shorter, right? But I feel like you really should find out what the ACT is like before you make your final decision, because there's still students who are going to be so much better off with ACTs than the SATs.
So take both tests.
Take both, of course, but if you take the 2 hour and 20-minute test as versus 3.5 hour, most kids are going to gravitate toward taking the digital SATs. But we are experts in kind of predicting how kids are going to turn out, what they're going to score at the end. And there are definitely kids who are better off with ACTs than the SATs.
Describe the students.
The kids who read well and they don't, reading. So if you do on your reading section and science section, which is both 35 minutes, you should take the ACTs, because math, if you struggle with, people say there's math and science sections in ACTs, whereas there's only math on the digital SATs, right? If you struggle with math, you gotta take the ACT route. Now, if you do well in math, then you take the SAT route. It's as simple as that, from my opinion, for all those years I've been teaching, just because ACT math, you can improve from a 25 to a 35. It's doable. SAT math, if you convert that 25 to an SAT, I would say that's about 550 around, right? To go from 550 to 750, I don't know if that's going to happen. Within a year or so. So ACT math is very straightforward. You can improve. ACT science is not scientific. ACT science is your readability. So if you can read fast enough and you struggle with math, you go with ACTs. If you're good with math and you struggle with reading a bit, go with SATs. That's as simple as that.
So again, the SAT has 4 sections, 2 reading, writing, 2 math. Mm-hmm. The ACT has English, math, reading, science. And so there's kind of this misconception that because the ACT has math and science, that's half the test, a little more STEMmy, a little more math sciences based, but it's not. Because science is mostly reading.
You took the ACTs, right?
I did take the ACT.
Why did you take the ACTs?
It was a shorter test at the time.
Right. Was it shorter than the SATs?
At the time, I think it was about the same, but I liked the fact that the ACT had shorter sections, kind of more rapid paced.
Okay.
And I was a faster test taker. Mm-hmm. I always have been. And so that kind of matched my ability a lot more.
I see. So 4 sections cut up in they're shorter in each section.
I kind of like the time crunch in being.
You can read fast enough.
Yeah, when I took the SAT, I had a lot of time left over, and that killed me because it's like, do I do it again, or like because I got a lot of questions wrong because I wasn't careful enough.
Well, I think ACT is just it's such an efficient test that you can even delete your score. You can mail in a score cancellation form to Iowa. You can get your score erased. Or if you end up taking the ACTs 5 times, no college will ask you for a full record of ACTs. They will ask, you have the option of reporting scores that you want to report. The ACT now also has what's called a score choice or super scoring system.
Well, let's talk about super scoring then.
Yeah.
Another more practical difference between the two is that it's the score you'll be sending to colleges. Mm-hmm. there's this idea called super scoring. How is it different between the two tests?
I think it's you have to handle it with some caution, because if you take it 4 times and let's say you score highest of each, you score highest on one section from each of the 4 tests, there's a chance that you'll show colleges that you took the ACT 4 times, which is not very favorable. It's not a good sign that, taking the ACT 4 times, SAT 4 times to colleges won't like that. So I want to tell students that, you should have your ideal score based on maximum of 3 sittings, if not 2, if not 1, right? So SAT doesn't have that super scoring option on their websites. You do that by sending in your test one, or you have score choice. You can send your scores based on, right? Or you can send all scores. ACT literally says your scores are getting super scored, and that's a no if you've taken it more than 4 or 5 times. So handle it with care is what I would say.
So the SAT does not have a formal super scoring option.
They don't.
You
They
just
don't.
choose which sittings you want to send to schools.
Right. And colleges will know that when you choose your scores, they'll know that you have sent selective scores, because there's always option of saying all scores or selected scores.
And do colleges know if, for example, you took it 4 times and you sent 3 scores that you didn't score 1, or just that you did not score all of them?
Well, SAT, very few schools, I mean, it was half and half back in the days. I would say 5 years ago, half of the schools will ask for all scores. Schools like UPenn or Cornell, they ask for all scores. A lot of others, half of the other schools ask for only score choice, right? But nowadays, sorry, I forgot the question. Those colleges will know. Colleges will know how many times you've taken it if you send all score report,
Sure.
right? If they ask for that. But otherwise, they won't know how many times you took it.
How does super scoring work on the ACT then?
It's automatic. They take the highest one of each test. So if you've taken it 5 times and you have a 35 on certain date, they'll just automatically take that. They'll put that as your high score.
So they'll take the highest of each section.
Yeah.
And that's the one kind of score they send to colleges.
Yeah.
So automatically, formally in the system, you don't have to do anything.
You don't have to do anything. But I'm saying you can also opt out of that by submitting scores individually. If you send 2 scores individually, you make payment twice. Okay?
But that's an option.
That's you can do that.
Would you ever do that?
Well, in extreme cases where you took it 4 times and I want to send 2 scores and the system already has 4 scores recorded.
For ACT?
Yeah. If my super score is based on 4 tests,
Yeah.
whereas, so let's say my super score out of 4 tests is 35,
Sure.
and my combined score of 2 tests is 34.5, which is still treated as 35. So should I send the automatic super score, or should I submit 2 scores? I will send in 2 scores.
Because the automatic super score colleges see all 4 tests.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah. So, and that's a flag. No college, no top tier colleges will favor a student who's taken the ACTs or SATs more than 3 times. That's just a very general rule from the back days.
Okay. Let's say I started studying for the SAT or the ACT. In what situations would you say you would switch between the two? Or do you make that decision lightly?
Not lightly. Not lightly. I would just say, based on the reading section, because the digital SAT has seen such a drastic change, it's going to be really hard to go from studying the digital SAT reading to going to the ACT reading section. Maybe the inverse would be a little easier, but unless you're making the switch because you feel much better suited for specifically the ACT reading section, I would say that change is going to be a lot different and a lot harder.
That's actually very true. It's if you are switching in middle of your junior year or beginning of your senior year, 2 things. One is it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. And the second is it's not going to make too big of a difference because chances are, if you're switching because you want to, if you're going from 90 percentile to 95 percentile, that's a big jump from SAT to ACT, which there's a good chance it won't happen. It won't happen, right? And so, and then I have kids, these days I have kids who have taken 3 digital SATs and have a top score of 1540, and they don't like that. They want to get above 1550. They think 1560 is like the ideal score to apply to top 20 schools. I don't know where that came from, but these guys are switching over to ACTs nowadays during their rising senior summer. I mean, they could do well on the ACT, sure, but is that the best way to spend your summer break? I would say no. Okay, so it's very important to find out, like, instead of switching between SAT and to ACT, vice versa, find out your strengths and weaknesses from the start, and then make your decision from there.
Right. Begin with the informed decision.
Right.
Don't make the switch later.
Informed decision it is.
Yeah.
My next question was going to be, what if my first score is really bad? But but if we're giving that advice, we
Right.
should not talk about that consideration.
Well, I mean, if they're both very bad, it depends on what you mean by.
Okay,
it
no,
depends
my
on-
question would have been, I started studying for the SAT. I took an official SAT administration, and I did not get the score I wanted. Is that... that's probably
that's
poor
very
planning.
possible.
Is that-
Well, no, I mean that happens for students.
Happens for a lot of
For a lot of
students.
students.
Let me enter that
Yeah.
again. Let's say I took the ACT or the SAT. I studied. I thought this was going to be my test. I did the official test administration. I did not get the score I wanted. I got quite a bit lower, and this has nothing to do with, the person next to me had a really loud mouse or it was really hot in the room. I just didn't do as well as I wanted to. Is that perhaps a sign to switch to the other test?
No, so I would say if you begin with either one of the tests, 3 tries is what you should make to. I mean, after 3 tries, you're pretty much done. Okay, but if you want to switch over to the other test after the first try, that's just not a wise decision, because it means that you weren't fully equipped nor prepped to take your first test. And so
Regardless of whether you're taking the SAT or the ACT, you just weren't ready.
right. So I mean, and most students don't know whether they're ready or not. They take it because, like our students in Korea, they take it because they think August is the time to take before school begins, right?
That
I'm sure a lot of
logical little time right after summer break
they-
before you
that's a
start
logical
school
time.
studying.
But there's no logical time for SATs. You take it when you're ready. And just a lot of misconceptions about, there's going to be so much, we're going to be so bombarded with schoolwork during fall semester, spring semester, and whatnot. But, statistically proven, students have finished the test date that most students have gotten their final score is either on the August of senior year, which is the right before senior year starts,
Yeah.
or October of senior year, which is so there are more students who's finishing the SATs with their satisfactory scores by senior year than junior year. So all this discussion about, hey, I'm not satisfied with my score. What do? I don't have time. Eventually you're gonna have to take it down to August or October of senior year. So no sweat over what your score turns out after first try in junior year, or even kids are taking SATs as early as sophomore these days.
So how early is too early?
It's
It's
student
entirely
dependent.
personal.
It's
I'm
very
sure.
subjective.
Right.
I'm
subjective,
sure.
But okay, let's just say if you want to get over 1550 and your first test score is 1300s, I would say a fair score to hit 1550 is if you get anything above 1450, you have a shot of getting over that 1550, 99 percentile at some time.
Your cold blind diagnostic.
Yes, yes. But if you're below that, if you're below 14, if you're looking at like 1300 numbers, if you're at 1390, 1380, you gotta wait it out, or you just gotta train yourself. You gotta prep. You gotta learn.
Do you see a difference between students who take a cold blind diagnostic in their sophomore year versus in their junior year?
Big difference.
Big difference.
Big difference.
And that's just from having lived another year, studied another year,
Oh,
having
yeah.
developed
Right,
throughout
right.
school.
That's the whole point of these scholastic aptitude tests, because these aren't achievement tests. These are aptitude tests, right? So, why do they call it aptitude tests instead of achievement tests?
That's what the
Because-
SAT stands for.
Yeah, exactly. That's what a SAT stands for, and it's always best to take it when you're ready, when you're equipped, when you have learned the materials, and that's usually during junior year. Yeah, I mean, you look at students from Exeter, you look at students from Andover, you look at students from Harvard, Westlake. You know, these are top boarding schools out there. Are they so well educated? Are they better educated that they can take it earlier in sophomore year? You know, in fact, these guys take their SATs, first SATs in second semester of junior year. They take their second SATs in senior year first semester, right? So you got to look at these schools that are well educating and see when they take the SATs, because, I mean, the better equipped you are, the less sittings you'll have for these tests. So finish it in 2 tries, right? Without having to worry about. I mean, the question about I totally bombed my exam. I didn't think this was possible, but I received like a score that I what am I gonna do with this? They're just missing a lot of information. Their lack of information on how they're approaching this test. Yeah, take it when you're ready, right?
Right. But that also goes with saying that to have that conversation, you need to do all of the steps before taking your first official standardized exam. That's doing a diagnostic for SAT and ACT, looking at what you're doing poorly on, looking at readiness to sit an official exam after having had that conversation and then sitting the official exam and not getting the score you want. Then obviously you need to wait it out. You need to work on it a little more. You need to give yourself more time and space. Absolutely. But if you don't do all of the precursor steps, I would just say that conversation is moot. So always start with the diagnostic steps we've been talking about.
Okay. Theoretical question. I took both the SAT, I took the ACT diagnostic. Both felt about the same. I got similar scores when you look at the conversion. I'm not particularly better at math. I'm just kind
Totally
of
possible.
there. What's the decision making behind that there?
Scheduling, because SAT and ACT has different schedules. ACT, I believe, there's a testing during July and September and October, let's say, right? So if you're starting to prep sometime during the summer, July could actually be a good just trial test, right? And then take your real one in September and finish by then, if not by October. I think those 3 consecutive testing dates are quite ideal for ACTs. SATs, it's all over. It's March, May, June. There's October,
August, October.
August, October, November, December. So there are more tries, attempts you can do toward the fall and winter. So that, depending on whether you play fall sports or spring sports or whether, however your school schedule works out, you should decide by then.
There's also probably a question of availability.
Availability, yeah. If you're international, one exam might be more approachable, or you might have agency to take one exam more over the other. That definitely is a factor. If you're really, I hesitate to think of an example of a student who is so equally split down the middle, like there's no preference between SAT and ACT. I don't think we really see that. I would just say make sure for the ACT it's faster paced, but it is a longer exam, so make sure you're ready for that stamina. I think that is going to be a big factor, and it's just also very word heavy. Now with the change to the digital SAT, the ACT is going to feel much more word heavy, and it's a different issue from just reading comprehension. It's just having to sit down and look at that many words for over 3 hours. It's a very specific experience. So make sure you're up for that. If your knowledge is really 50-50, you can start to think about the testing experience and what is an environment that you can you think on testing more reliably, do well.